She was a force to be reckoned with. To look at her, you wouldn't think much. But hey now, how is everybody doing? Welcome to Red Alert Diaries with Tanya E. Hood. I'm glad to get the chance to see you again. And I'm wondering if you have been thinking about what your legacy is. Is we often forget that every day we live, we are making our impact on the next generation, generations upon generations that come through you. One day, well, look back at what you're doing now. So, what are you doing? What are you considering in your life that gives you the opportunity to ensure that you're impacting the next generations so that they are positioned to do bigger and better things? We don't often think about it. And I know for certain that my grandmother didn't think about it either. But she left legacy. She left legacy in her walk. She left legacy in her talk. She left legacy by being intentional with who she wanted to be. You see, her world started off like a lot of us do, doing what it does, living life, surviving, struggling, doing the things that you know you need just to try to keep your head above water. You see, my grandmother was born in 1924. At the time of her birth, as she was growing up, she entered into the United States Great Depression. That had a big play on her psyche because it was during the formative years of her life that she started gaining some thoughts about how she would move forward. You see, being Black in America at that time, living in the South, because she was born and raised in Macon County, Georgia, the South is not really supportive and giving and caring for Black bodies during that time. So she learned the importance of watching after your neighbors. That had a key component in the actions that she took moving forward when she initiated several legislative changes that impacted Washington, D.C. when she moved up here. She joined several of the civic associations because also going through a time period where the civil rights movement was in place. Oh, yeah. My grandmother was what I call one of the original Black Power princesses. And when she walked through that journey, she recognized that you have to start working on some of the elements around you by impacting what's happening with legislation. So she went out, gathered her neighbors, got what she needed to help those that were responsible for looking over the laws of the land to start making some changes. So Washington, D.C.'s council office, oh, they knew my grandmother, the first Black mayor of Washington, D.C., Mayor Washington, knew my grandmother by name because she was one of those powerhouse individuals. There wasn't a whole lot to look at, but she was able to rally around because her heart-centered soul knew how to speak to the individuals that were around her. And being born and raised and impacted by the elements that affected her growing up, the Great Depression, civil rights movement, moving into those different elements. And by the time we started roaming around the time period where I started showing up, she was more mindful of what was happening with little people around. So my grandmother had a major impact on getting some street names changed, street lights put in place, like the one that is located off of 13th and Florida Avenue in Northeast DC. Yeah, that corner didn't always have a street light, but because of children walking, trying to get to the elementary school on the other side, crossing H Street and then having to cross Florida Avenue, there were too many people that were using Florida Avenue as a drag racing spot, and too many babies getting impacted in the process. Yet my grandmother decided that was no longer going to continue. So in Ward 6, she made changes and adjustments. And later, when she moved into Ward 5, she made other changes and adjustments to playgrounds. Once upon a time in Washington, D.C., there used to be these stacking pillars. They were wooden pegs you sort of stepped on and climbed up along the way. Well, one time while playing with my cousin, I fell down, ended up injuring my ear. To this day, I still have a little bit of concerns. But on top of all the other developmental concerns that I was walking through, I had to deal with a hearing loss, learning sign language, as well as trying to figure out how to deal with my lisp, my undiagnosed ADHD, and a lot of my dyslexia. And everything else. But it's because my grandmother raised me, that she gave me a foundation that supported me. My grandmother took the time to learn sign language to teach me that foundation for me being a child of the 80s. When I was walking through that construct, I had her insight that when the war on Black souls was put in place, because they called it dealing with the war on crime, but most of the people that got locked up during that time for crimes were Black and brown bodies. She was used to that, having lived through civil rights. When we had the energy crisis that took place in the 80s, my grandmother knew how to deal with that because being raised during Depression gave her insight about how to build a business. And if you or a child raised in a household of entrepreneurs, you gain some skill sets that support you. So I grew up with her legacy fueling me, pushing me. It reminds me of a song that she sang when I was little to help me go to sleep. She would sing this song. It was a nighttime melody. I don't know if she made it up because she made up a lot of things or if it was something that was taught to her. But the song went like this. It says, down by the water by the itty bitty boo, swam 3 baby fish and the mama fish too. Swim, said the mama fish, swim if you can. And they swam right over the dam. Boom, boom, together got a water chew. Boom, boom, together got a water chew. Boom, boom, together got a water chew. And they swam right over the dam. Here's another thing about that being a part of my legacy moments because I sang that song to my children as well. One of the other things about my grandmother, to help her survive and live life, she was a jazz singer. She sang her strong bravado. She wasn't really tall. I think about 5'6", 5'7". I can't really recall. But to me, when I was little, she was a giant. So when my 5'4" self walks around acting like, because it's true for me, I have to often be reminded that 5'4" is considered short. Still don't know why. But for those of you that know me, y'all know. I believe with every fiber of my being that I'm a giant. And so with my giant side soul, it's fueled by the legacy that was given to me by her, a woman, not a whole lot to look at, but a powerhouse nonetheless. But in the last half of her life, she became more intentional about how she would fully function because there are glimmers. There are glimmers of who you are that you spread along the way. Her words gave impact because she was a woman of action. She was the type of person. We don't have them as much as we used to. But I was raised at a time where your neighborhood was your village. Neighbors would watch after each other. Neighbors would watch after each other's children. Neighbors were a lot like family. And as a result, I have a lot of people whose blood does not run through my veins, that raised me, that took care of me, that watched over me. They had a major impact on my life because of the actions that they took to ensure that I was okay. They may not recognize because a lot of us never know that the impact in our lives that we do here right now today, that is laying a legacy for those that will come behind you. It may not be a full impact for those that are in your immediate circle, but there's an impact nonetheless. Because the other day, someone reached out to me because they were listening to something that I was sharing, and they said, you reminded me of your grandmother. They remember her, the love that she gave, the impact that she shared, the support that she provided for her neighborhood, which then impacted the city. And if you ever knew my grandmother, Willa Mae C. Sims, you know, she was a powerhouse to be reckoned with. Nobody could really tell by looking at her, but if you ever took the time to have a talk with her, some conversations with the people that were around her, you would recognize a lot of the impacts that she made. And it's not until we find ourselves in a position where someone shows up at our funeral and the people that are left behind truly get the chance to see. Because the groves of people that turned out for my grandmother's service, I never even imagined. I never even knew she knew that many people The teeny little church that sat on the corner that held her service was not prepared for the number of people that came to give their respects. You see, the people that showed up for my grandmother, they were congressmen, council members, and bums on the corner that she fed along the way. Because the action-oriented person that resided in her soul knew that she had to give. She had to do something. Take the time that you need. Look around. What's happening around you? Who can you impact now? Because you're leaving legacy now. Make certain that you're doing it in such a way that is beneficial so that when the world looks back and history tells your story, because you're not going to always be able to tell the story about who you are and how you function. And some things that you do today, people may not fully understand. There were a lot of things that I definitely did not understand that my grandmother was laying as a foundation for me to do this thing called life. My grandmother worked on helping other people. He looked at me like I was crazy, but I knew what I had to do. It was time for him to go. So I packed up his things. Red Alert, Is He the One? The pocket guide to find and love your life tells my story. The free chapter is available for you in the link below. One of the things that we don't often pay attention to is that the world around us is shaping us. It is in the construct of where you were born, when you were born, and the country that you were born in that gives you some elements about your being. And it also impacts you moving forward into your future. And generations that will come behind you, they will feel that impact. The world may not think that you're much to look at, but that song that my grandmother gave me as a childhood melody was about the fish going upstream. You see, when salmon are born, they got to try to make their way. Keep moving, keep moving. And for a Black woman born in the 20s in the United States, her legacy was to know, keep moving. When life is throwing things at you, keep moving. When you're not sure what's happening next, keep moving. As the world moves around you in spaces and places that you cannot fathom and do not have a clear understanding about how to truly navigate, keep moving. It is your action that will fuel you. It is your action that will support you. And it is your action that will give you quick life lessons to know when you need to pivot, to make other adjustments in your world, to be whole, to get to your next level. If you need to reset from the chaos that is causing you issues. And so for today, if you don't remember anything that I'm sharing with you, here's the one thing I want you to know. There are lessons that you are learning in the life that you are living that is giving legacy for future generations. Make certain each moment counts. And if anything that I've shared with you today resonates with you, then it's time for you to reset. And if you want someone to join you on the journey, feel free to go to my website, tanyaehood.com. There you can click under the Work With Me tab and see the various ways that we can work with one another. And if you are on YouTube, you can join me live every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where we can continue the conversation or we can start a new one. In the meantime, this is Tanya E. Hood, walking in my purpose, and I want you to do the same.